Hey, it's Whitney, and I want to show you something today about making big chalkboard signs. I'm going to show you exactly my full process going from designing your design on Canva, which is a free program, and then transferring it to a bigger chalkboard. So it's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to show you actually my screen this time, and then I'll show you me transferring it and how to do it from start to finish, and I'll show you what tools I use, and then you'll see the finished product. So let's go ahead and get started in Canva. Okay, so this is canva.com, and this is my design for my little chalkboard. It's for my coworker's son's birthday. So what I've done is just kind of designed all the elements. I found a cute font. They have a ton of different fonts here. And then I am, of course, going to transfer this to a chalkboard. So any kind of print font is fine. You can do any kind of script font, of course. But these prints, I just kind of made these here. You can pick any kind of generic type print that you like that fits. And I just use that kind of for spacing. So it will actually kind of look more like my handwriting when I transfer it to the board. But I do want to use that just to keep the spacing correct. So what I want to first do, I had made this a poster size. So I want to resize it to the exact size of my chalkboard. I should have done this at the very beginning, but I didn't have the dimensions. So I go up here to resize. And I know that the board is 16.5 inches wide and 22.5 inches tall. So resizing, copy and resize, it makes a whole new file. It changes the name, so the original is still there if you had to work on it. But this is going to be the new one. So I did have a few versions just since once I like something, I make a copy just in case I wanted to come back to it. But this is kind of what I've ended up with. I did put a banner picture in here. This is just one of their clip art options, but I know that they don't have the curved text. So this, again, I'm going to have to ad-lib a little bit once I put it onto the chalkboard. But this is kind of there just to help me see where the spacing should be in the letters. So it looks pretty good to me. I thought about adding something here. I might just move this down a little bit. Some of the elements I lock so I don't click them when I'm still editing. But I'm just going to move this down just a little bit. And then maybe move the cow and the horse up. So these are all just free clip arts that you get on Canva. And of course the colors don't really matter since I am using chalk. I just kind of found something that looked similar. So when I trace them, they will kind of have the same feel on there. I'm going to do a little horse and a cow. And everything else looks pretty good. I do like to group the elements that kind of go together. So when I'm spacing it, and to space it, you can just highlight them all and go to position, space evenly, vertically. And those lines kind of help too when you're doing this. I do want to group these. I can select them and click group, or I can click Command or Control G. And then highlight them all, position vertically, and it kind of keeps everything in space here. And of course, I need to group these so they don't get spaced. And to unselect some things, so I tried to select just these things. I want to click Shift and then click the things I don't want selected. So I don't want the horse or that selected. Sometimes the borders will cross over. Or if those things were locked, if you click the lock button up here, it wouldn't select it anyway. So I want to position, space vertically, and that kind of looks a little weird. So I might move this down just a little bit again. I think it's the and that's messing it up. So I'm going to do that one more time. So once I'm happy with everything, I downloaded this as a PDF and open it in Adobe Acrobat. And then to print it, I click Control P or File Print, and then I go to the poster setting and make sure it's scale at 100%. And I do a little overlap of 0.25 inches and then print it. I did black and white to save color ink. Okay, so now that I have it all printed, I am going to show you, I'm just going to add in the hyperlapse of me doing this whole process, and then I'll definitely link all the tools and the markers and everything that I use at the end. And I'll show you a final picture. So let's get started with the actual chalkboard. So I made sure to wash the chalkboard very well, and now I'm taping down the transfer paper. And I tested to make sure that it was turned over on the right side by just scratching on it. You can see that white mark to make sure that it kind of was on the right side so I could see what I was doing. I tape it down. I'm using washi tape here and just trying to do the best, but it doesn't really matter how it looks as long as it's flat. And then now I'm cutting out the design and pasting it onto the chalkboard. Make sure it fits and is centered, and try and line everything up as close as you can get it. And then I just tape that whole thing down to the board exactly where I want everything. And make sure it's secure, you don't want it moving around. So I tape on pretty much every corner. Then I just grab a pen or a pencil. I'm using a pencil here and go over every single thing. I don't show everything here, but I literally went over everything. So you can see that I have a nice little outline to get started on the design. And don't worry about all that extra white smudge. We can get rid of that later. So I'm using the Canva liquid chalk markers. They have 2 tips. You can switch it out. I'm using the chisel tip, but there's also a bullet tip. Either one works great. But I'm just first outlining everything. I'm going to come back and add color to these things. That's why the picket fence is not complete. It's just the outline because I know that I'll be coloring it in later. And then this is my favorite part, writing. So I did use a generic font from Canva, but when I write over it, it just makes sure that everything's pretty consistent. And it still does look like handwriting since I am handwriting everything. And here I whip out my phone. So I am going to show you how slow I actually write this stuff in real time. So I'm going to show you real quick this little section. So I am still using the Canva chalk marker, and this is the bullet tip that I'm using here. You can tell how slow I have to go to just make sure I'm on all of the lines. Some of the lines I go over. So you can see how this process will take some time. I think this whole chalkboard took me about 3 hours to do with all the colors, but I love how it turned out. So I'm finishing up here. You can see when I'm writing Santa that I keep pushing my pen over to the side. That is just to refill the tip with ink. So I push it down on a paper towel or a scratch piece of paper to make sure that the ink is flowing. So next up, I'm using color. These are the VersaChalk markers, and I'm using blue for these little subheaders here. Blue was awesome. I just had to outline the letters and then fill them in. It was a little bit harder with some of the other colors, the red especially. I had to go over it like several times to make sure it worked, to make sure it kind of stood out because it just kind of kept blending in with the chalkboard. And you can see there, I had to pause. This is the same brand. I used the bigger tip and I just had to go over it a ton to make it that bright. Then I grabbed the yellow chalk ink markers. These are from their spring pack. I love the chalk ink brand. The yellow wasn't so bad. I just went over those same letters and did some of the bigger headers in the yellow. And then I'm using white here to outline these letters. I always just start with the outline and then just fill them in later. So I saved the big letters for last. I did the same thing and just outlined them. I am doing it upside down, but it's really not a big deal just since all the outlines are already there. Outlining the banner and then adding in the outline for the little doodle animals. And the font there, again, when I transferred from Canva, it wasn't perfect, so I just kind of went over the letters just like kind of in a tall style of my own handwriting, just using the letters that were there as a guide. And then there's my favorite again, that is the red. This was a little bit easier since I was coloring in a big area instead of trying to be precise with those letters. But this is the final product. I love how it turned out. I wanted to show you a few more things about how to fix your mistakes when you get done. This is the Tombow Mono Eraser. It's one of my favorites for everything, but I'm using it here to erase some of the smudges from that transfer paper that we had from the very beginning. So bigger areas like this, you can use the Tombow eraser, any kind of eraser I'm sure will work. I also can grab a paintbrush, so some of the smaller errors, I dip a little paintbrush in vinegar. So that's what I'm doing here, and I go and can just run it across some of the smaller areas where maybe the eraser won't fit. So if you like this video, I hope you do. Definitely subscribe to my channel. I hope to have more chalkboard helpful videos because I want to be doing a lot more of that this year. So definitely subscribe and like this video and leave a comment about anything you learned. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.